Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad everybody have a little bit of break. Maybe surprised earlier they said, "Oh, just come up," and then I don't want to steal everybody's break. I'm Dongyan Wang, work for Landing AI. I think most of you may know Landing AI is founded by the AI guru Andrew Yin. So we are fortunate to work with Andrew every day, really try to help to transform the AI industry. Living by myself, I've been in Silicon Valley for 20 years, working for high-tech companies like Cisco and NetApp for a little bit more than a decade, and never told people I graduated with AI PhD because it was not useful. It was a winter of AI. We use a lot of the machine learning techniques using today's word for data processing in those back days for analytics. However, really until 2012, when this new trend of AI coming up with deep learning, then all of a sudden, people like myself and even other people have been saying, "Oh, I have an AI background," but it was just never told you about that. So we have come a long way, and we really begin to see impact to a lot of companies using AI transformation. For example, myself work for a company, the second largest consumer electronics company in the world, a Chinese company called Idea Group, basically as their chief AI officer, the global AI lead. And amazingly, we can see tremendous impact using AI to transform a classic traditional company. So we'll talk a little more about that. So first, I want to use one quote from Andrew. He has been saying this since 4 years ago. AI is the new electricity. I think a lot of people think it's a catchy phrase, talk about AI, but it's very interesting to think about what's the underlying meanings, interpretations about that saying. First one, as we think about electricity, how electricity transformed the world more than 100 years ago, it's a sweeping change. I think a lot of the changes we saw after the initial kind of invention of electricity, nobody can imagine the impact only until probably 50 years, 20 years later. That's how AI will change and transform our world, our industries from our point of view as well. It's going to sweep everywhere, all the industries. The second one is when we look at electricity from the past history, it basically does two things to every single company. One is it adds value. So if you work for a company 100 years ago, no matter which industry you are, if you adopt electricity, of course, slowly, phase by phase, step by step, but eventually you fully adopt that, it basically adds value. The flip side of the coin of that is, imagine a company who did not adopt electricity when that transformation happens. It's hard to imagine that company will be even surviving in 10 years or 20 years. I think that's one thing when I kind of speak with different customers from a transformation perspective on my past history and a lot of the familiar faces from my past company, and also from a lot of the companies. It's really hard to imagine how AI will transform us, and if our company, our customer does not adopt AI, will we even survive, right, in 10 to 20 years? I think that's a big question a lot of companies begin to really think about. The third implication of this is really the organization impact and change management to any organization. I don't know if anyone here know when the first electricity began to hit the industry resolution, and then there was this kind of role called VP of electricity in many companies. So companies basically set up this role to figure out how to adopt electricity for their company, what's the implications. And when we think about that today, it's kind of funny. Do we really need to set up a role, probably a very highly paid role to figure that out? And it was very challenging. But if you think about 20 years ago when companies began to hire CIOs, it was the same logic, right? The information age transformation began to hit us, and we really don't know what to do, and a lot of new technologies kind of popping up, different things, Oracle, Salesforce, from our aspect. The CIO's job is really try to figure out all this mess and how to adopt it. And we are seeing that happening today for AI as well. Some companies begin to have chief AI officers, begin to even have chief data officers to begin to even oversee the AI side of the job. We are seeing that happening to all the companies because to figure out the technology challenges is challenging enough, but figuring out the technology and the business application marriage is even more challenging. So first, let's talk about the sweeping changes of AI as we see in the last 4 years. So first, when we see the job openings, the AI job openings has increased 35-fold over the last 4 years, according to AI Index. When we see the research papers publications is skyrocketing, not only the number of papers we're seeing, but also the increased scope of the communities, not only from universities anymore, or different companies, not only internet companies, this kind of and also traditional companies, different traditional industries also begin to set up internal AI R&D team to really see how can we apply technology, AI technology into their verticals. And we also see this kind of spreading across. If you look at the global countries, not only the leading ones like US, China, and the UK, the 3 countries really invest a lot, but a lot of other countries begin to set up to really use AI to leapfrog their country, right, using AI. So it's really huge focus. We see a lot of sweeping changes there. This is a number of earning calls mentioned about AI. So the last 2 slides really show concrete numbers of impact. This one, I think different people can interpret this in different ways. I think from a positive side, this is really a sign of every company begin to say, I have to really adopt AI. Even before I adopt AI, I have to talk about this, adopting AI in earnings calls, or at least begin to drive that change. Otherwise, my investors, kind of my PEs and all those big investors will have some pressure for us. So I think that if there's one takeaway, I want you to take away from this is really with all the sweeping changes we saw in the last 4 years of AI, and really I think we just see the beginning. It's not beginning to the end; it's really beginning, and really this is the 3rd time AI really come around, and we actually firmly believe this time is the real deal. We're going to see AI to really be adopted in real world and provide business value. We're going to see that impact for the next 30, 50 years, or maybe even 100 years. And it's not only going to be for the internet companies anymore. As you see in the last few years, people may recall in 2016, Google first came out and say, hey, we are not a mobile first company anymore, we are AI first company, right? So that totally changed the paradigm with the AlphaGo and all those things. And you see all these big internet companies, they begin to adopt AI. And why is that? Because they have a lot of data from the internet accumulation, and also they have a lot of computing power. And both of those are more accessible today than ever, even for the traditional companies. A lot of the companies, outside internet companies, actually have a lot of use cases, a lot of data, but trying to figure out how to really adopt and apply AI. And in many sense, in many aspects, the traditional companies actually have more advantage, in data than the internet companies for their own verticals. So that's really one thing is going to impact many companies, industries outside the software. If you see a study from McKinsey, this is last year. So basically, McKinsey predict AI is going to create 13 trillion additional value by 2030. It's interesting, this research, the number you search online, you may see different reports with different changing number, but the trend is the number keep going up. I'm sure for next year, this number may going up. Another thing you see here, a lot of the value creation actually is not in the internet companies anymore. It's actually in different other sectors. Some of the sectors you see here, transportation, logistics, agriculture, retail, travel. So a lot of these kind of traditional companies are going to adopt AI, and we are seeing a lot of the companies really are pushing very hard. Many of the visionary CEOs and CXOs, or even their PE investors, are pushing very hard for companies to transform using AI, because they see this as a leapfrog power to really transform the company and really step forward to jump ahead of their competitors. So why that happened? There are 2 things I mentioned. There is the explosion of data, and there are a lot of computing power available. So one of the interesting things when Andrew first started the DeepBrain in a DeepMind project in Google, and it took about 16,000 computers to build a model to recognize cat. I think that was very famous. It made the New York Times, and it's a lot of money, and Andrew has to pull in help from Jeff Dean, from other people to say, give me all this power, and I can do this. Today, anyone from you here, you can go online to find the available algorithms and pull up your credit card, charge $2,000 from AWS, and you can replicate the same thing today, right? And this was only a few years ago. So the accessibility of the algorithm, the computing power, is unprecedented, and we are seeing the computing power prices dropping and dropping as we have more and more those kind of both internal and also cloud-based, AI computing power, especially GPU-based. The other one is the availability of talent and the ideas and the tools, right? So this is both a challenge, but we're also, and it's both a challenge and also opportunity. We actually see a lot of improvements in terms of talent availability, although I think everybody in the company, even in the Valley, has been saying it's so hard to hire AI talent, especially not talent not just fresh out of the school. They really have real project and product experience, kind of really have that successful experience deployed AI into the real world. But if you look at the number of talent, 2.5 million people has took AI trainings. Most of them took these trainings online through Coursera and kind of deep learning.ai. And we actually are very proud that 2.3 million of this 2.5 million people took Andrew's classes, actually. They actually learned all this and they apply them to their work, and we're seeing really a proliferation of talent, not only in the Valley, but also in other countries as well. So hiring talent is still hard, but it's getting better because it's really a lot of software engineers also trying to get into the AI space. Research publications, the great things is a lot of this research are openly available, and we are seeing 100 papers a day almost. So there's a lot of progress, but still it's very hard. There's a lot of more progress, but a lot of the challenges also to say which research is mature enough to apply to the real world. And then there are all these open source tools. If you're in the AI space, this is very fast evolving. It's actually very hard to figure it out, even for landing AI's a team. We have the top AI engineers, but all these things keep changing to even build an internal machine learning platform or deep learning platform and keep up with all the evolution of all these tools. It's actually very complex work. So having said that, we have sweeping changes of AI, and we have a lot of accessibility of different AI talent and tools. Now we come back to the second challenge of how do we add value, or how do we even survive as a company, especially if I'm a company outside of the software industry. It really comes down to starting with the challenge of picking the right use cases. I'm sure this challenge is not that different from any other major technology revolution or evolution, but how do we pick up the right use cases? We, from my experience, and Andrew's experience, and also Landing's experience working with different customers, we are doing transformation program right now. Typically, this is like 18 to 24 months engagement with the customer. We actually understand their domains, and then we help them to identify the strategies, define the strategies, identify the opportunities. It's kind of very interesting to find out a lot of the initial ideas our customers have, or we even have, are really not the best ideas to add business value. So that's why I always go back to say, can we brainstorm together to really have 6 or 7 ideas, and we can really always use the filter to say, does it add a business value for your company in the near term? I'm not talking about 5 to 10 years. I'm sure you don't have that much time to really say, hey, let me prove the value in 5 to 10 years at all. After all, we are not research companies, in the university. One example, I think, to illustrate that is very interesting. One of the transformation customer Landing is working with is an agricultural equipment company. Think about this company like the John Deere, kind of company. And initially, we talked to the CEO, and everybody is getting very excited to say we work with Landing and Andrew's team to really build some cool projects of AI and transform our company so we can really be successful, have successful products, and transform people's perception of us as a kind of a lingering agriculture equipment company, but to a cool high-tech driven agriculture equipment company. So the first thing we want to do is really put autonomous driving on the agriculture machines like harvesters. That's a good idea. Everybody think a good idea until we begin to challenge what's the business value you are really going to deliver in the next 1 to 2 years. Right? If you think about 5 years down the road, it'll be very cool to say I'm a farmer. I'm standing on the by the field or in my home, and I'm watching these 5 or 6 harvesters just harvesting by themselves, right? And that's great. But if you think about the near-term value, if the harvester can only do autonomous driving from A to B like a straight line, or maybe it can do some turns, but it really cannot handle the complex situation in the field, right? I don't know if anybody has been in the field. I have never been before. Partner with the company. I mean, there are electric poles. If you go to China, there are a lot of tombs actually in the field. I'm not sure we want to build the largest data set of tombs and then build the best AI models to recognize tombs so the harvesters can really go around it. There are a lot of complex situations in the field, right? So that's when we go back to say, hey, even you build all these things, will the farmer really pay for additional price of your harvester to really achieve this simple functionality of autonomous driving rather than fully autonomous? There's definitely value there, but it doesn't seem like this is a good project for you to start at the beginning to really build the success and confidence for your company. Then we changed the idea we proposed to the company to say, how about you do this? Because you put the cameras in front of the harvester, you look at the crop situation, the height, right, the different type of the crops, right, the lunging, the different levels, and you put cameras in your back end to look at the green cleanness and the breakage, and based on this different information, you actually change the operations, the driving speed, the thresher speed, all those kind of complex operations of the harvester, so you can optimize for the yield and the quality. Because the interesting demographic here is in most of the countries, we have an aging population. And driving the harvesters is actually not the most exciting job, right? So you rarely have people with a lot of experience. And then you have a lot of young kids kind of driving the harvester. They don't know how to drive the harvester. Now you have AI to assist them. To say even a person like me, who have never had experience, but if I'm driving an AI harvester, I probably drive as good as the people with 20 years experience. This you can sell to the farmers because they can hire a less experienced person with lower payment, but still achieve the better quality, right? So that's kind of an interesting example when you think about it. Most of the cases we talk to the company, the CEOs have some good ideas about the initial projects. When we go back to challenge them, CEO is always the first person coming back to say, hey, I was wrong. We need to pick the right use cases. So to pick the right use cases, we have a few kind of methodologies we have been thinking. One is start small. Don't try to pick the largest impact AI projects. Pick the ones you can execute in the next 6 to 9 months. For example, when Andrew was in Google, he started a project in Google Speech, which was not really the most important thing in Google at that time, right? So they showed success, and then they moved the next step to do kind of Google Maps to recognize the house number, right, using OCR technologies, and then do the geolocation, and then that was a big success, and then they began to move into the core business of Google, which is advertising. When we were in Midea Group, we started with kind of 4 focus project. For example, AI rice cooker, which is basically you put in rice in there, it can automatically wash and kind of storage the rice, but also using computer vision to recognize different type of rice. So basically all different types of rice in the market, we recognize them and then we cook them differently based on the rice type, so you can have sushi grade kind of rice every single time, which is very useful. And we build that project has been a big success. and win a lot of rewards and a good product. Then we began to expand into other consumer electronics, and then we further expand them into, for example, visual inspection into the factories. For example, recognize missing parts in the accessory boxes for consumer electronics, and also put some of the capabilities into e-commerce and smart new retail. Kind of customers can come into the retail store and begin to use the AI capabilities to really, search for products using voice, using NLP, using computer vision, face recognition, and then we have, recommendations for them based on their past purchase record. So start small with 1 or 2 concrete pilot projects. That came from 6 or 7 good ideas. Apply your filter of business use cases and go from there. The second one is try to automate tasks rather than jobs. There's a lot of sayings about the AI will come over to really replace people's jobs. We actually see the contrary. AI is going to help human to really automate and do a lot better on, automate some of the tasks. For example, in radiologists, right, they do a lot of different things, and reading X-rays or CT images is one of them, and AI can help them to do that. We at the landing, we do a lot of work for visual inspection for manufacturers. For example, like either liquid leaking or air leaking. And this is actually interesting. One of our customers manufacture compressors. They put into water tank to test the leaking of the compressor. So very small bubbles. So you have the visual inspectors every day looking at the line. Every compressor, they have 8 seconds to look at, is there any bubble coming out, right? I think for anybody here, if you do that all day long for 8 hours, it's not really a fun job to do. And plus, you're going to miss a lot of those kind of bubbles because every 8 seconds there's one thing popping up. You miss that bubble, then that compressor is going to be shipped to customers, may cause explosion or something like that, right? So we use AI can really look at the video, basically catch those bubbles, and then make the human's task much easier, so the visual inspector can focus on more other things. So those are good use cases to really find those repetitive, hard for human to do, but AI has this great capabilities of being very reliable, accurate once you train them up. And the third one is really combine the AI expertise and the subject matter expertise. In a lot of the traditional industries, right, even internet companies, you really have deep understanding of your domain, right, which nobody can replace. And then the AI experts has a lot of AI understandings. They know which technology is probably more mature. Hopefully you have some AI experts who have done this in the real life, real products, not only pure R&D perspective. So they bring that to the table and then discuss and partner with the customer team. We always found that to be very effective. Both sides can find use cases together. So start small, automate you tasks, not jobs, and combine the AI and the subject matter expertise, and then always use the business value as a filter to select the right projects. I want to emphasize it's very important you pick the right first 1 or 2 projects and make sure you're successful. Why is that? Because for a successful company, there are a lot of dots. There's a lot of dots of the AI adoption for any new technology. If you really fumbled for the first 1 or 2 projects, it may take you a couple of years or even longer to really recover and restart it again. Then you lost that very valuable survival time, right, for the transformation. So I know I have a time warning here. I'll be going very quick here because there are a few important trends here for really coming around the corner with AI. One is we are really building up AI as a systematic discipline, right? So if you look at this, it took humankind a long time to figure out how to really build a systematic discipline for civil engineering. And same thing, we're evolving to build up that for the AI process as well. And also, we have a lot of the process, we are building for the software. We have built for the software industry like an agile process. But in the AI side, it's going to be very different. For example, in landing, we are doing kind of 1-day sprint cycles instead of 2 weeks sprint cycles for the normal software engineering, because we need to really iterate fast and really improve fast. The second one is this huge trend of small data. I think everybody here talks about big data, but the problems of many industries and companies, you don't have a lot of data to really train a deep learning algorithms. In many cases, you only have probably 10, 100 images or limited data to train. So the technology is a combination of data augmentation, one-shot classification, and also kind of new algorithms to help us to really be able to train very good AI algorithms using 10 to 100 images, and sometimes in landing, our customer only give us a couple of images. So we need to develop that. The third one is the metadata for reinforced learning. In robotics world, we do a lot of simulation to generate data, but this is a new technology. Companies and also research institutes begin to build a lot of different simulators to have the simulators to really build up the AI models and be able to really adapt to use different simulators for different cases. Right? So I know we are running out of time, so I'm going to stop here for kind of these new trends, and hopefully this will give you some thoughts about AI and also the real-world applications.